Welcome everybody to our great book series. I'm Will Taegel. I'm Dean of the Wisdom School of Ubiquity University, and we're very glad to be with you today and explore this domain of prophecy. I want to call your attention to the fact that we have any number of, in fact, several hundred participants today. And we welcome you to join us in the chat. So if you'll go to the bottom of the Zoom screen, wherever you are, if you're zooming in, then you can click on chat and you can make comments and offer questions in the chat. And also Sheila Safer will be paying attention to that and also occasionally putting links on the chat that you may be able to use. So as we start today, we're going to find out, I want to ask the spirits of the water world to be with us in these explorations today. I have here in this glass some fresh rainwater that we collect here at our house. And so I ask the spirits of the water in the Hopi tradition to be with us today. And then I also have with us today a match, and I'm going to light some of the solar energy. So we ask the spirit of the sun to be with us today in this exploration. I have here also some rich soil that I took out of the garden, and I ask the spirit of the soil to be with us today. We'll see later how this is important to the Hopi transition to a new world. I have here also some plant. This particular plant, I'm about to set myself on fire here. I have a plant here, and this particular plant comes from just outside the door here. It is a plant that Gandhi used in his garden just before he engaged in the salt march that was crucial in freeing India from the grasp of colonialism. And so I ask the spirit of the plant to be with us. I want to raise the question, how does prophecy work? Is it predicting a future that is inevitable, or is there room for choice? And what role do we play as people who are not Hopi or indigenous in any obvious way? Does ancient wisdom address our global situation? I will pay attention to these questions today and more. Remember the lake of prescient wisdom we took a dip in last month? It is filled with the deep blue water of these prophecies. So let's swim around in the lake for a few moments and probe the meaning of prophecy. When I was in my 20s, I co-authored a book with a Greek scholar in which he tunneled into the Greek word prophesia. I still recall the day when we were on retreat writing the book, and he told me that he translated the word prophecy as the act of witnessing or seeing from a distance the sacred panorama of the human condition. Prophecy, he told me, is seeing with a wide-angle lens what most humans don't see because their eyes are clouded by our overly rational culture. I kept chewing on that insight, but I still didn't know how a person might gain such a perspective. Soon after, as a young man, I returned to tribal roots and studied with elders for over a decade. During that time, I was introduced to various ceremonies that aimed at liberating me from personality and cultural patterns that dominated my everyday life. Chief among these ceremonies was vision fasting, especially when the practice is conducted within the context of an ongoing spiritual tribe. I had been on my first vision quest when I was 18 years old, but I did not have proper elder guidance. So the iron fist of cultural patterns we call our ordinary ego let go only briefly. Then the patterns returned in full force for a decade and a half to dominate me. I was able to see a little bit, but not very far. The visionary door closed quickly because I had no tribe to support and interpret the visions. Through the years, my elder companion, Bearheart of the Bear Clan, taught me how to open the doors of perception more and more. Even more important, a visionary community called the Earth Tribe formed slowly over the decades. This community became deeply dedicated to opening a wide-angle lens. Bearheart and I, along with other elders, listened to hundreds of vision questers as they returned from their quests. After about 40 years of my own quest and listening to our tribal members and various ancestors, I began to grasp, if only dimly, what prophecy is. Prophecy is a mosaic of visions pieced together into a cosmic map. Prophecy comes from an expanded bandwidth and wide-angle lens of seeing. Prophecy allows spirit to lift you and many others high enough to see the spiral of evolution itself. Prophecy enters the witnessing presence and allows a seeing of how events have unfolded, not only in your own life, but also as a piece of the broad picture of the human journey within Earth herself. But alas, no one person sees or witnesses it all. Needed is a quilting together of hundreds, even thousands of visions until a cosmic pattern takes shape. Return to White Feather's startling revelation of the Hopi prophecies to David Young in 1958. Last month, you may recall that I was overcome with tears when I referred to the council fires of my college days, when we built authentic teepees and heard snippets of the 9 prophetic signs given to us from White Feather. At first, I was puzzled by my tears last month, even a little embarrassed. I didn't know how I could continue. Then it dawned on me. My feelings were actually profound awe over how life unfolds along synchronic lines. For example, here are convergent lines of synchronicity. In June of 1958, I had been on my first vision quest at Lake Conscious in New Mexico, not far from where David Young had picked up the old hitchhiker named White Feather. Then that very fall, I built my first teepee and heard snippets of these visions 5 years before Frank Waters wrote the Book of Hopi, which you have been reading. Then, following would be decades of my listening to these visions while a dim cosmic pattern took shape. All came together because of these synchronic lines, and I was deeply moved as this dawned on me for the first time last month when I was talking to you. I'm grateful for these glimpses of the spiral of evolution, but they are very small compared to White Feather and White Bear of the Hopi. Think of how the Hopi, the Cahokia, the Toltec, the Maya, the Muskogee Creek gathered thousands of visions over thousands of years. They pieced together a crazy quilt of visions. They guarded them with their lives. They kept them from white people and mainline culture until 1947, when the gourd of ashes, the atomic bomb, was dropped. This grand witnessing of the spiral of evolution is prophecy. A witnessing of the spiral of evolution from a distance that is earned through vision fasting in this tradition. Prophecy is stepping out of the space-time continuum into eternity. It is stepping into what in ecophysics we call non-locality, where information is transmitted beyond the speed of light, across and beyond usual space and time. In vision quests, we say we taste of a little bit of death. In this stepping with one foot into the door of death, we inch our way into eternity. From the perspective of non-locality and eternity, it is possible to behold glimpses of the past, present, and future, all rolled into one. Or as Einstein put it, space and time become a continuum that can be viewed holistically. In that regard, prophecy does not make sense often to mainstream historians, because it takes place in a vantage point beyond history itself. Prophecy is not rational. It is transrational. It is not an account of ordinary events. It is a transordinary scene of massive developmental phases of humans, and more than humans, in an epic narrative. Prophecy looks at these vast patterns that move in cycles and sees what has been, what is now, and most important, what is likely to be. It is, however, a mistake to think of these mosaic visions as looking only to the future. The seeing perceives past, present, and future in an opening when the veil of history is torn apart. If you can see what happened in the past cycle and observe the present, then you can see where humans are in the current cycle. You can also see where the cycle is leading or trending, as we now say. In prophecy, listen to this. The future both visits and then attracts you. We raised the question in our last session of whether this means that the mosaic of visions we call prophecy determines our future. We ask ourselves, do we have any choices here? Or is the future already written in water and wind? In short, we ask ourselves, are we humans in the 21st century destined, predestined to be doomed? To engage prophecy properly, we will need to hold the following opposites inside our aware egos. On the one hand, we have tendencies in our human behavior that appear to be determined. On the other hand, we have our choices, our intentions, and our practices that impact outcome. Both our determined behavior and free choices are true at the same time. But how could that be? Let's take our individual lives as a clue. Our developmental stages in a biological and psychological manner are, to some degree, determined. Humans learn to walk, learn to talk, learn to use the potty, have an influx of hormones at adolescence, and finally achieved, at least to some degree, a fully formed brain. If you are female, you go through an obvious menopause. If you're a male, you go through it, but maybe not so obvious. Eventually, all humans complete the cycle of their earth walk with the death of their bodies. All of this is predetermined. There are no exemptions of the life, death, developmental cycle. Death is determined. Choose all you want, meditate all you want, intend all you want, exercise all you want, eat organic food all you want. Death of your body is still predetermined from the day you were born. On the other hand, there is much room for choice within that cycle. Take walking, for example. Most humans learn to walk, but there exists a wide range of choices of carriage in walking. The choices you make with walking reflect your relationship with gravity. Your choices and practice determine the angle of your spine. Each of these developmental phases of walking, talking, hormones, sexual activity, and old age are shot through with choices. All of us notice our bodies slowly dying, yet we have many choices and practices about how to navigate that journey. So in response to the question, does prophecy mean our future is determined, or are there still free choices? The answer is both. Just as we move from latency in grammar school to adolescence in middle school, so according to prophecy, we are moving from the fourth world of our current civilization to a fifth world of a new and hopefully sustainable civilization. That much is written in the memory of water. That said, our choices and practices are crucial as to how that transition occurs. And get this, who will be included in the fifth civilization? My own visions and those of many traditions reveal a rich relationship between what is determined by the cycles and what is shaped by our choices. Well, enough of my musings on prophecies. Let's turn now to the Hopi prophecy rock to look at a truly cosmic map. The rock drawing was not included in the book of Hopi that I asked you to read. So I'm going to include it here because it's an excellent summary of these oral prophecies and also in some ways beyond what Frank Waters wrote. If you look there, this is a rock that was discovered in the late 1800s and was likely drawn by the Hopis as a way to summarize their view of all of their prophecies. And in that sense, it's been a bone of contention and also revelation for them for some time. The bottom left corner stick figure is often interpreted by the Hopi as a person, a human by the name of Masau, who is an embodied expression of the sacred mystery and who taught the Hopi way of life to the remnant people as they emerged through the Supapu, the opening. They walked out of the caves of the third world to the current fourth world. And Masau was the midwife. And this is my own drawing that I think you can see a little better. And my drawing consists of several renditions of Hopi prophecies that I have integrated into one design. So off to your right, you can see a circle here, which generally is interpreted as the sun by the Hopi. Then right here you see a cross, which has many interpretations. Some Hopi see this as the medicine wheel. That is, the practice of the medicine wheel is absolutely crucial in the unfolding of the prophecies. But it's also seen by many wise people as being a star, so that Masau there is a visitor from the stars. Then you see a line going straight up to a container, a box right here, which is a place of energy for the journey. It might be seen as a shamanic cave, actually. It might even be seen as Plato's cave. This is the place where the humans in the fourth world go their separate ways. So you see you have two lines here. And this line up here, where you see the cursor, relates to Western civilization and the dominant global civilization that we have right now. Some interpreters see these two lines, this one here and this one here, as being the way of good, which would be this line, and the way of evil, which would be this line. Others see it as the spiritual line right here and the material line right there. Let's look at the upper line for a minute, because I see it a little differently. The task of Western humans right here was to ascend, to walk the path of scientific inquiry and critical thinking, and develop along the way an astounding technology. This is the path that Plato chose. He left the cave and told us liberation, enlightenment lay in ascending to the heights, to the ideal. Okay, so just reviewing there for a moment, this is Masau, this is the sun, this is the medicine wheel or the star, this is the cave out of which the two lines of development came. This bottom line is the way of wisdom, of a particular deep earth wisdom. And this top line is seen by most Hopi and other native people as being the way of current global civilization. As I was saying, this is the path that Plato chose. It was not an evil or bad path, but eventually this path lost its way, lost its connection. This is the path that has led us humans and the planet to a state of misguided arrogance, where we think of ourselves as the apex of evolution. We even gave ourselves the name in this Western civilization, Homo sapiens sapiens. One Hopi elder that I respect a good deal, Thomas Banyakya, created his own drawing of the original pictograph. And I borrowed some of his ideas, some of his perceptions. You can see here that human beings on this top line have their heads separated from their bodies. And in this way, they proceed into what becomes called in indigenous world the zigzag pathway. And it's seen, it's going up, it's ascending. It's going ostensibly toward more and more evolution and knowledge. But in this wisdom, it's seen as the path to oblivion. And the path is characterized by the separation of the head from the body. Now let's look at the path down to the central pathway sometimes called the red path. You can see here that there is a path down, and in the original drawing, it's a little more angled, but it goes down to the main pathway. And this is what I would say that we in Western civilization have come to at this point. The two circles along the line, right here, and right here, are sometimes seen as World War I, World War II, and some Hopi see this circle that I'm pointing to at this point as World War III. Others see it a different way. The third circle is sometimes seen as the great purification or shaking of the world through any number of means. Some elders see that shaking is going on currently, and I certainly would agree with that. That brings us to the figure standing in the midst of the corn plants, right here. And these are corn plants here. This is a very important bit of message that these two figures are seen as connected. This is Masau, and this is Masau as he or she returns. When Whitefeather visited the Toltecs at Teotihuacan, he encountered the story of Quetzalcoatl, the Toltec version of the incarnate Great Spirit. Masau also was seen as the embodiment of the Great Spirit. Notice that Christians have a similar story with the return of Jesus. Also note how similar the word Masau and the Jewish word Messiah are. In my early tribal journey, I was introduced to a Comanche figure who also had the name Masauta, meaning infinite chief, who draws all to a sacred point. In all cases, this figure is seen as crucial to the fifth civilization. Over the years, I've had a sense that this figure you're seeing there standing in the corn plants might be the return of the divine feminine, or a web of communities that honor the sacred feminine by adopting earth-based values and practices. To me, the new figure on the right standing with the plants is Our Lady of the plant world. And that brings me now to discuss the mosaic of visions taken from many tribes that point the way for remnant humans to give up our current civilization's dysfunctional patterns and return to the main road. This is the term Pahana given to the returnees and also to Masau. Here are a few of the characteristics that the remnant humans or Pahana will make in traveling the descent from the top line in the pictograph down to the main line. I call these key people Bridgewalkers to the new era. First, Bridgewalkers to the fifth civilization are people who are immersed in the wisdom of water. The Hopi rotate their lives and ceremonies around the experience of water, or lack of water. That is also true of the Toltec in the Teotihuacan pyramids and of the Cahokia along the Mississippi with their pyramids. Our bodies are 70% water, thereabouts. Mother Gaia is composed of 70% water. If we are to be part of the great return to the main pathway, we will need to learn the language of the watershed. We will need to treat our fellows as if everyone is downstream from someone else. That is the basis of the ethic of the fifth civilization. And how might we become bridge walkers between the fourth and fifth civilization with regard to water? We will need to become proficient in the practice of water wisdom. As a bare minimum, we will need to know how to collect water. Bridge walkers are water collectors. In my view, we will not be judged by what we believe or by dogma or by how enlightened we are. The simple judgment of our Mother Earth is this: do you have the water you need and enough to share? Consider these questions. What is the source of the water you drank today? What percentage of your water consumption is used for flushing toilets? Where does your so-called wastewater go? Why is it important to know the chemicals present in any water that you drink? What would you do if there was a 2-week interruption of your water supply? Given climate change and political ineptness, which seems to be a virus sweeping across the planet, some scientists believe the average person within our planet has a 90% likelihood of an extended interruption of water supply in the next 5 years. Hint: the solution to this dire circumstance is not to go to the grocery store and get plastic containers of water, as you might in a hurricane. Your store won't have water. Your faucet won't run water. As Dean of the Wisdom School of Ubiquity University, I am strongly recommending that every student, every undergraduate and graduate, every faculty member, every staff member, every investor, every person listening to this particular teaching have a basic course in bridge walking to the fifth civilization that includes the phronesis, or practical wisdom, of water. Why would I make such a statement? If you have no water to drink for a couple of weeks or more, it doesn't matter if your education prepares you for a job or schools you in transformation. It doesn't matter if you can do yoga and Tai Chi. It doesn't matter if you have mystical and spiritual experiences and can meditate, or if you are an expert with computers and have a killer job. It only matters if you have a relationship with water that gives you a cool drink, and one you can share with your neighbor who disagrees with your political beliefs. We in the Wisdom School are partnering with the Wimberley Valley Water Association to form an engaged ecological campus centered around an artesian well that is 140 feet deep and runs for miles. The third week in September, we will have a gathering of people who aspire to water the seeds of a new civilization. Sheila will be putting up on the chat link for information about that, and we hope you'll be there. In short, evolutionary bridge walkers to the fifth civilization have a high water IQ. Second, bridge walkers to the fifth civilization have a direct and conscious relationship with the sun. Did you notice in reading the book of Hopi, that they chose a place that gets a lot of sun? How many days of the sun do you get where you live? How many kilowatts do you use on an average day? I'm going to say that again. Do you have any awareness of how many kilowatts you personally use on an average day? Just as a cliff note, the average in the USA is 30 kilowatts a day. Suppose, as climate researchers now predict, that you have an extended period when the grid goes down. Let's say 2 weeks, no electricity. What do? To run your devices, your stove, your refrigerator, you need about 12 to 15 kilowatt hours per day as a minimum. Even if you have water, you'll need juice to pump the water through the house. How much sun do you need to absorb each day through your skin to get enough vitamin D? Research shows that you double your risk of heart disease if you don't get enough vitamin D. The so-called sunshine vitamin may protect against a host of diseases, including osteoporosis, heart disease, cancer of the breast, prostate, and colon. What's more, sunlight has other hidden benefits, like protecting against depression, insomnia, and an overactive immune system. The discerned judgment of Mother Earth and Father Sun is very simple. Do you have a good enough relationship with the sun to be a part of the fifth civilization? You see, it's not a far-off God who judges us, but rather a simple question. What is your solar IQ? Third, the great return from the abstract line set in motion by Plato and to some degree by the Abrahamic religions that leads to oblivion, to the main pathway, features a remnant of people whose toes and hands dig into the soil. As you read the book of Hopi, you likely marveled at the Hopi ability to grow corn in soil, and this growth of corn seems to be beyond the knowledge of modern agriculture. We have so much to learn from the ancients about soil. As archaeologists have recently learned, the first inhabitants of the Western Amazon created a swath of earthworks that stretched between southeastern Bolivia to western Brazil. It's a 700-mile swath of raised fields, roughly is raised about that much, roughly the size of France. The vast fields have canals for water channels, tall settlement mounds, circular pools, permanent zigzag fish ponds, mile-long raised causeways, ranging from simple irregular ditches in the south to elaborate geometric arrays in the north. According to Clark Erickson, a University of Pennsylvania researcher, the region is a model of how human beings can use even the most apparently unpromising areas to create and maintain environments that match their needs. Because the mounds, soil, and fields required enormous labor to construct and maintain, Professor Erickson hypothesizes that these civilizations must have had gatherings of people, hundreds of thousands of people. Carbon dates suggest that this civilization reaches back more than 3,000 years. In another part of the Amazon, these raised beds of soil were constructed in civilizations that reach back 7,000 years. So it appears that what we have thought of as a primeval rainforest is at one time supported an environmentally friendly civilization, one where humans lived in massive numbers in balance with the forests. Their link with the soil is beyond our current grasp. Humans who become bridgewalkers know that the word human comes from humus, the organic component of soil. Both words are deeply connected to the word humility. And humility is the apex quality of the fifth civilizational human. Humility in this context is defined as an acute awareness that we humans are simply a species among species. 5 years ago, I had a conversation with the president and CEO of Roseburg Forest Products. His company has 3,000 employees and $1 billion in revenue each year. They own 625,000 acres of forest in the Northwest USA. I'll say that again, 625,000 acres. Their approach to the forest is to clear cut and then replant monoculture fields of Douglas firs. The problem is, between the time of the clear cut and the planting of a crop of trees, much soil, humus, washes away. At the time of our conversation, I was reading about Erickson's finding in Brazil and Bolivia. So I suggested to my friend that Roseburg Forest Products could learn much from these ancient people. He owns a private jet, and I suggested that we might fly down and examine Erickson's findings. At first, my friend seemed interested. There was a trace of light in his eyes. But then he made this comment, typical of us. How could people living thousands of years ago in the Stone Age know about our problems and have solutions for us? I replied, they have something to offer us because their soil and forest IQ far exceeds anything we know. Bridgewalkers to the new civilization pass the judgment of a high soil IQ and humbles themselves before the insights of past civilization. Fourth, Bridgewalkers into the fifth civilization have a practical and conscious relationship with plants. Notice in the pictograph that I showed you that plants, along with Masao, are the first participants in the fifth world. Let's note for a moment the role of plants with tribal visions. No wild corn ancestor has ever been found. Corn's closest relative is a mountain grass called teosinte, which looks nothing like corn. Thus, corn is a co-creation of the plant teosinte and humans. Humans and this wild plant got together 6,000 years ago in the highlands of Mexico. And one researcher from the Penn State University, Nina Federhoff, writes, corn or maize is arguably humans' first and greatest feat. No wonder the Hopi consider maize or corn as a sacred plant. It was given to our civilization by an ancient civilization. The judgment of Gaia's climate change and the way across the bridge to the fifth civilization is embodied simply in this question. What is your direct relationship with the plant world? What is your relationship with the plants you eat every day? Now, I want to wrap up what I have to say with a couple of three images. So I want to bring up the image of the cave of the white shaman. On the border between southwestern Texas and northwestern Chihuahuan Desert of Mexico is the archaeological region known as the confluence of the Pecos River and the Rio Grande. It contains more than 2,000 archaeological sites dating back from 12 to 20,000 years. Of these, more than 300 sites are rich with ancient pictographs. Among them, the most famous is the White Shaman Cave. The Cave of the White Shaman was created in the Pecos River style and is considered to be among the most impressive rock paintings in the world. It has been compared to the European Paleolithic art of Lascaux. In the 1950s, my friend Jim Zentgraf discovered this impressive art while he was on a photographing and fishing trip near the confluence of the Pecos and the Rio Grande. With Jim, I visited this ancient site, these ancient paintings for years. In 1999, Jim invited the Earth Tribe to hold a vision quest in the canyon near the cave, and the Texas Rock Art Foundation very carefully gave us permission. As we sat around a ceremonial fire in 1999, Jim asked me if I personally would be willing to engage in a vision quest inside the cave the following year, 2000. He laughed and said that he had himself tried to spend the night on a fast there in 1990, but the spirits had become too active, he said, and had driven him out at midnight. I didn't know whether he was kidding or not. But so it was that I agreed. And in May of 2000, on Buddha's birthday, I climbed the canyon wall. The temperature in the desert on that day I began the quest was 104 degrees. As I entered the cave, Jim said to me and to our tribe, to his knowledge, this would be the first time a human had come to the cave for a spiritual quest in 4,000 years. Skeptic that I am, I questioned his observation. That night, however, I didn't doubt. Here's a picture that was snapped by someone in the tribe as I was going into the cave for an extended period of time. And as I walked into the cave, I thought about White Feather. I thought about the building of teepees when I was a freshman in college. I thought about the prophecy rock. I thought about how these civilizations, the first civilization, hundreds of thousands of years ago perhaps. So as I sat in this cave and fasted through the dark of the night, I eventually found a place that fit perfectly my buttocks with the cave wall to my back. I reached down and felt where I was sitting because I had no light. It was smooth. The stone indentation where I sat had been polished by the bare butts of 1,000 years of ancient questers. The solid limestone forced me to have a straight spine. I won't go through all of the details of the vision, but I want to bring one element that supports and expands the Hopi prophecy rock. During my stay in the cave, I had an experience of the White Shaman. And to my surprise, the White Shaman, at least in my vision, was a female. This White Shaman figure said that the people who preceded the Hopi, the people who preceded the Teotihuacanos, the people who preceded the Cahokia along the Mississippi, they all passed on their wisdom and their mistakes to the next civilization. I was told that they made their mistakes, but now The visionary figures that appeared were telling me simply, both on the wall of the cave and in my dreams, it is time to pass the medicine stick to your generation. Here is the big truth, a big truth that we missed in our time. Now it is your time. Hopefully, you will do better. And here's the truth. Love is the greatest power. Underneath all movement in the universe is a love that won't be denied. Love is a power that brings us together. Love connects. Take care of your connections. Yes, you can. You know you have the second sight. You see it in the night. Take care of your connections. Yes, you can. Your only work is to remember who you are. And who you are is little packets of love. As I hiked out of the cave after the fast, I knew one thing. These visions of the tribal people were not coming from the past. They were drawing us to the future. And so it is with indigenous prophecies. Now, I want to shift to another image, and I bring this up as actually a link to our course we'll be offering in September that Sheila put up on the chat. But it shows, in my way, this is something that Dan and I have created, bringing together several sources that we'll be focusing on, but I believe is the essence of the Hopi, the book of Hopi, in telling us what our role is in the current global civilization. If you look and you see that at the current paradigm, humans are seen as the top of the pyramid. And notice also that it happens to be a man. Surprise, surprise. And then below that is a woman. And then there are all the other creatures of the planet. And down underneath that is a globe where there's a great emphasis on nation states, making the nation states great. What I believe the prophecies are pointing toward is our becoming bridgewalkers, to move across through our relationship with water, through our relationship with the sun, through our relationship with the soil, through our relationship with plants, moving into a new civilization that is a circle, and where humans find their place, their humble place in the midst of the circle of life, and where the planet itself, Gaia, but even more personal, Mother Earth, is our guiding radiance. So thank you very much for your patience as I've waded through any number of materials. And I'm going to shift now to Georgie. And thank you, Georgie, for your response. And Georgie speaking to us from Budapest.
Oh, well, my deepest gratitude to you. I could listen to your wisdom forever, really. Thank you so much for this very powerful and profound presentation of yours, and almost every line you said, I not almost all of them actually, I agree with, and there's so many things I would like to share, but I know that we passed the hour already, and there are many people who would like to respond to you. Since your last presentation, which I wasn't able to be part of, but I re-listened, rewatched it on YouTube, and I had many questions, some of which you answered already at the beginning of your presentation. The implication and the application of the Hopi prophecy. How do I decipher the Hopi prophecy, and what do I do with it, really? And I'm not questioning where the messages are coming from. I'm not questioning their validity, because to me they sound coherent. And not only the Hopis are so connected to the invisible plenum. There are so many other indigenous cultures, one of which actually I would like to suggest for you to read. This is an amazing book if you haven't read it before. The Mutant Message Down Under, and recommended by Marianne Williamson. This is actually an American journalist who ventured into the outback in Australia, and she discovered what it is like being connected to nature. And towards the end of the book, there is a short story that she goes into a cave. There are lots of images drawn by the Aborigines, and they all depicting every single major event happened in history. So I recommend for you guys to read it if you wish, just to get a different aspect of the story of humankind and where it is heading. There are several questions. I'm still puzzled by the implication of the Hopi prophecy, such as how I'm wrestling with the determination and the free will. That is it the case actually? And I'm talking to my son and to you as well. So maybe you can shed some light on my puzzlement. That do the prophecies actually mean that if we do this and this and that, this is what's going to happen, or is it actually a predetermined line of evolution, so that this civilization has to come, that kind of death that you actually talked about, that the human body comes to that death. So is it determined that our civilization has to die? It is obvious that the practices, the way we live our life, they have to come to an end, because it's just so not coherent, for sure. And we lost our innate wisdom, how to connect to earth and how to live as part of this reality that we perceive reality. So these are my puzzles, really. I think that I'm going to sleep a lot on it and see what comes to me. I must say that the first feeling I had it was fear. It was really fear that what is going to happen to many of our loved ones and those we don't know, and maybe we don't love as much as we love our close people. And what do I need to do with this Hopi prophecy? And what came to me is exactly what you were saying, that I need to live according to this worldview, that I am a active agent of this evolving universe. I am not a passive part of it. I am part of it. I'm not the pinnacle of it, really. And I am reflecting. I'm the reflection of you, and you are a reflection of me, and all the plants and animals. And I do speak to my plants, and I do hug a tree when I can. And I consider plants having a consciousness, a different type of consciousness than animals have. So thank you very much for listening to my rambling, and these are just what you evoked in me, and the feelings and the thoughts. And thank you very much again for sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us.
Yes, well, thank you, Georgie. Let me respond just very briefly to say that I do think that we already are seeing in many ways the dying gasps of our current civilization. And this is just my own understanding, and I believe many indigenous people would see it that way. And this is frightening. I don't I don't know how to talk about it exactly, except as you were talking, I was thinking about how the cells in our body die off periodically, and and that's predetermined. We have some choices as to how healthy these cells are, and our practices contribute to that. But no matter what we do, there's going to be an exchange of cells in our body cyclically. And this is very much not a linear view, but rather a sense that the large human story has been going through these cycles, and that there really is no choice about the fact that we've learned about as much as we can from this particular cycle, and we're cycling into another. Then last time I said if you use, there are many people, including myself, saying that the underlying addiction in Western civilization is an addiction to Western civilization. And our only way through that is to know whether we're going to hit a high bottom or a low bottom. And in the same sense that an addict can make choices to hit a high bottom and not lose her house and car and children and lifestyle, or they can go to the low bottom where nearly everything is lost. So I think that's what I would see that our choices are now. And I'm teaching a course over at Texas State University with Vince Lopes, and last week he said to a group of PhD and master's students in sustainability, he said, there's no way to get from where we are in a consumer civilization to a sustainable and regenerative civilization without going through some very dark times. And I think that's why we need each other. And it is a vulnerable time, and it is frightening. And yet I think it's in the love of the community, in our connectedness, that we can have hope. Okay, so let's shift over to Mark Ryan. Mark, I'm sure you got some great comments.
Oh, thank you, Will. But thank you so much for a very powerful presentation. And forgive my cold-ridden voice here. So I just have two things on my mind. Both of them are complex issues, and I don't want to do anything more than give each of them a line, because I know we want to hear from some students. The first comment is that all of these prophecies, in the process of understanding them, involve a great deal of hermeneutics. That is to say, we are interpreting them inevitably from a particular perspective of our own. And in the interpretations will vary. The one thing that does come to my mind about the more severe and pessimistic interpretations was my recollection of that the world was going to come to an end with the Mayan, the winter solstice of 2012 and the end of the Mayan calendar, and that was a real belief on the part of some, and that most highly apocalyptic visions of the past have not, from many different cultures, have not played out in the way that they were understood, with a rather literal and external view of events. So the other question is, with that play of hermeneutics, it presents quite a bifurcated view of the world. There's the Western civilization, and then there's the represented by the Hopi, the being in touch with the natural world. And it seems to me that there's also a place for looking at the world very pluralistically. If you take the point of view of a comparative religion, for example, you would find highly different cultures throughout the world who each have their own perspectives that would have to integrate what's being said here into their own worldview in some meaningful way in order for it to have a real impact and not simply be ignored. So I'm wondering, Will, if you have any thoughts about how this is, but I have not only thinking of different religions, but of what Western civilization consists of. I have a highly pluralistic view of that as well. So I'm wondering what thought you've given to how these ideas can be meaningfully presented to a world that comes from many, many different perspectives, or is that just not a valid way of approaching it, in your view?
Oh no, I think it's a very valid question. See, one of the things, how I came to this particular perspective was in a confluence of ancient wisdom and as a scientist, beginning with the study of psychology and then the study of ecophysics. So Judith and I discovered that underneath the pluralism of beliefs is a basic human relationship with plants, with soil, with water, and with the sun. And you remember that great image when Carl Jung came to the Taos Pueblo, and he was 50 years old. And it's kind of startling to us to know that Jung had never seen a person of color until his 50th year. He had never seen or had any conversation with an indigenous person until his 50th year. So he's having this conversation with Ochiwia Biano in Taos. And he asks Ochiwia to give him a perception of the white culture, of the dominant Western civilization culture. And he said, "I think you're mad." And Jung was surprised. He said, "Well, why do you think that?" And he said, "Because you think with your heads. That's all you do. Your faces are all pinched. Your lips are narrow." And so Jung said, "Well, how do you think?" And he said, "We think with our hearts." And Jung asked him, he said, "Well, now here, see, I'm telling this because here is a person, Carl Jung, who is the epitome of pluralism. And he is trying to understand this very specific, which seems to him to be an outdated, quaint point of view. And he said to Ochiwia, "How do you spend your days?" He said, "We spend every day helping the sun cross the sky." And Jung thought to himself, what a quaint Stone Age idea. But when he got back to Switzerland, his mother died. And he decided that he wanted to go as a part of his pilgrimage to Africa. And as he neared Lake Turkana, and as he talked to the ancient people of Africa, and as he talked eventually to Wolfgang Pauli, the great quantum physicist, he began to realize that the secret of life is that underneath all the pluralism of life is this deep energetic relationship with the natural world. And there at the edge of Lake Turkana, he said, I realized that my goal for the rest of my life would be to tunnel underneath and become a natural human. So what I would say is that if we take many rivers coming through the many sciences and the many stories and the many hermeneutics and the many interpretations, there's this basic connection with the mysterium tremendum of the sensual world. So anyway, that would be one response that I would have. So we have I think we've got any number of questions, but instead of addressing those, Dan is going to include those in the documents, in the what do you call them, Dan?
In the follow-up email that'll go out.
Yeah, the follow-up email that'll go out for all of you who will receive that. And I just want to pause here. We're nearing the end of our time together. And just say how appreciative I am, Mark, of your raising your questions, and Georgie, you're raising the question, and all of the comments in the chat, and the patience everyone has shown in these two presentations in wrestling with very deep subjects that are not easy to penetrate. And I also want to close by calling to our attention that underneath hermeneutics is this deep connection that we have through the five senses and through our sixth sense with this incredible blue planet of which we are a part. And I want to call to our mind a comment from the philosopher Rudolf Otto. When he said, all religions, all points of view eventually lead us to one point. And that is lying on our backs on a summer night, looking at the starry sky. Okay, everybody, and we'll return next month with the next iteration of the great books, and it's been great to be with you.